Good day, everybody. So good to see everybody's smiling faces here today. Hope everybody is having a great day. We really miss you here at school. Sorry you couldn't be here this week, but hope you're using your time wisely, completing all of your assignments and modules and everything like that, and hopefully we will be back in class sooner rather than later. We have been missing out on some of the stuff that we were going to go over, and so hopefully this video will serve as kind of a little bit of a catch-up to where we kind of need to be. We have gone over imperialism in the last quarter, what we looked at. You guys have taken your assessment on that. We had a little bit of a transition for the half days that we were back, talking about what was happening here in Lebanon a little bit and talking about the structure of the government in particular. And then you guys did the lesson on the Arab Spring, seeing that these protests were kind of an extension of that Arab Spring protest. And you looked at the role of social media in the protests and also in your own lives as well. You guys did a really good job with that assignment, and I was really grateful that you guys all completed that. Thank you very much. What we need to do today in this short video is introduce our next big thing that we're going to study, and that big thing we're going to study is nationalism, as the screen says here. So let's go over what nations are. Let's go over what nationalism is so that we can be ready for the rest of quarter two. So during this PowerPoint, what I'm going to ask you to do is this. You are going to take notes on what you see up here by hand. You are going to take a picture of the notes you take by hand in your notebook on a piece of paper, however you want to do it, and you are going to send me a picture of those notes to my email. Thanks! Appreciate it. There is a reason for why I'm having you take these notes by hand. It has something to do with science and the way the information gets to your brain, but it will help you learn the information a little bit better. So know that I'm doing this in your own best interest. Thank you. So here we go. Nations and nationalism. One of the big concepts that we are going to look at in this quarter is this idea of identity. What is identity, first of all? And we're going to see that identity is very, very central to most people's lives, to everybody's lives. Of who are you? Individually, who are you? How do you belong to this social group? When we looked at the structure of the government back on the whiteboard and all those colored people and everything like that, the big thing that kind of separated people from everybody else and how they formed different groups and everything like that was their identity. How they defined themselves and how they defined themselves both to themselves and then in relation to other people. And so we're going to be taking a look at this whole idea of nationalism is really based on this idea that identity, who you are, is pretty much everything, because identity is going to provide purpose in your life. It's going to motivate you to do different things. Now, before, let's say about 1500, let's look at identity historically, okay? Before about 1500, most people got their identity, no matter where you were on earth, whether you were in India or China or Europe or wherever, most people got their identity from their religion. As it said here, before nations came along, nations are a very, very brand new thing. That's why I'm saying before like 1500, there was kind of like nations, but not the way that we understand them today. And like I said, most people understood themselves by their religion. The primary identity of many people throughout the world was either their religion or their family tribe. If we go way, way back, even before kind of these organized religions start popping up, you have an identity in your family. So before kind of some of these new ideas come around in about 1500 to 1600, your primary identity, the way that you would identify yourself, where you got your purpose from in life, what motivated your behavior, was your religion or your loyalty and identity in your family or tribe. Some new ideas start coming around 1600, leading to this time or this era known as the Enlightenment. We start thinking about, well, wait a second, how is the best way to do politics in a society? What's the best way to organize a society? What is the best economic system? We start questioning all these things we had always done, including we start questioning religion itself, and all of a sudden we have to kind of get this new identity. If religion doesn't really work anymore, the old ways that we have done aren't the best ways to do it. Well, what are the best ways to do it? And these new ideas start popping up of, well, maybe the identity that we should primarily focus on, that we should have, is this identity of a collective us, a nation. So as it says here, during and after the Enlightenment, many start to question their long-held religious beliefs and traditions. With old ways of identity in decline, a new identity was needed to emerge to provide purpose in people's lives. The idea of nation became the primary identity of many people. But we haven't yet really identified what a nation is. So the question becomes, what makes a nation? I mean, if your old identity is this religion or your family or tribe, and these people are saying, well, really, no, your primary identity should be this nation that you belong to, we better know what the nation is. And there are some characteristics that we can use to say, oh, this is what a nation is. This is how we define a nation. And so, here are the characteristics. Language, traditions, history, narratives, buzzword for the year, religion, beliefs or values, cultural behaviors and expressions like music, art, literature, and space. Either a physical space, we all live in this same area or the same region, or now in the 21st century, a digital space. We all belong to this section of the internet. Now the question becomes, do you have to have all of these similarities to be considered a nation? Or what similarities or characteristics must you have? Which ones are essential to being considered a nation? I mean, is it language? We all have to speak the same language? Well, that doesn't quite fit for the United States where there is no official language. Well, what about a shared history? We all have gone through these similar events. Or what about a shared space? It used to be that if you shared the same physical space, then that would be one of the qualities or qualifications of being a nation. But with the advent of the internet, all of a sudden that complicates things. You can share a digital space now, and does that change then what it means to be a nation? This famous dude who studies this idea of nations and nationalism, Benedict Anderson, says, a nation is a, quote, imagined community. His idea is this: it is imagined because the members of even the smallest nation, think Lebanon, Lebanon's very, very small, even the smallest nation will never know most of their fellow members. Again, you don't know everybody in Lebanon, even though Lebanon is a very tiny country. They will never know most of their fellow members, meet them, or even hear of them, yet in the minds of each lives the image of their communion or their community. You are not going to meet 99% of the people in Lebanon, and yet you still have this imagined idea of the person who lives in Saida or the person who lives in Tripoli that you're never going to meet. That idea is they are going to share these similar characteristics, this identity that you also have as a Lebanese person. And so it's interesting to think, what are the characteristics here that are going to go to form this idea of nation? And like I said, some of these are going to get a little tricky. Here's what we're going to do. Using the previous characteristics, are the following nations? Is Lebanon a nation? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to write down in your notebook as you're taking notes right now. Write down either yes or no to these here. So the first one, number one, is Lebanon a nation? Yes or no, using the previous characteristics. How about this one? Even if you don't know a ton about it, that's okay. How about the Roman Empire? Is the Roman Empire a nation? Yes or no? That was number two. Number three, interesting one. Are Arsenal fans a nation? Look back at the characteristics you just looked at. Even though they might not share the same physical space, do they share other characteristics that would make them be considered a nation? Number four, is ACS a nation? Again, go back to your list of characteristics. Do they fit enough of the criteria? Are they a nation? And then finally, number five, is the Catholic Church a nation? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I want to see them in your notes. You either say, yes, this is a nation, or no, this is not a nation. And if you want to go above and beyond, you would provide a little explanation as to why, a little justification, saying this is a nation because, or no, this isn't a nation because of this, this, and this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm going to give you 1 second to do that. Is this a nation, or is this not a nation? Good luck. How'd you do? I am sure there are various answers for each one of these, and really the point here is that it kind of depends on how you're defining nations. Some people say that you have to share all of these characteristics, and some people say that, well, no, really it's only these 3 that you have to have. And the point here is that a lot of people define nation differently. There's a lot of different definitions for nations, and the trick is you kind of have to come up with your own definition. You have to define it for yourself so that you can then judge, well, is this a nation or is this the nation? Now, traditionally, what we've done over the past 100, 200 years is we have associated nation with country. Nation is this group of people living in this very defined state with political borders, and that's a nation right there. But one that hasn't always been the definition of nation, and it might not always be the definition of nation, but traditionally that's where a lot of people have gone with the definition over the past 100 to 200 years. A nation is a country. But I hope that you realize here that it's a little more complicated than that. Well, if that's what a nation is, then what is nationalism? It's going to be the theme of the rest of the quarter, and so we better have a good understanding of what nationalism is. Then I can say that nationalism kind of comes down to 3 main beliefs. And these are the 3 main beliefs you're going to want to write down, and you're going to want to burn into your mind so that you kind of have them ready and available whenever we need to think about them or consider if one particular example in history is a case of nationalism or not. Do they fit these 3 criteria right here? The first belief that all nationalism throughout time kind of has as a characteristic is this: the nation's way of life is the best way of life. In fact, it's the only way of life, really. Everyone in the group must believe certain ideas and behave in a certain way. If you don't believe these certain things, and if you don't behave in this certain way, well, then you're not part of the group. You're not part of the nation. In fact, you're going to be considered as an outsider or somebody who is an other person. You don't belong to the nation if you don't do the things and believe the things that the nation does and that the nation believes. So there is this idea that the nation's way of life is the best way of life. Number 2, circling back to one of our main themes for quarter 2, is this: identity and loyalty belong to the nation. One's primary identity, your identity, is in, and your ultimate loyalty belongs to the nation. Even more so than your religion, even more so than your family, even more so than your job. It's the nation from where you get your identity and to where you give your loyalty. And along with this idea is you must protect and advance the nation at all costs. In fact, your job should be a job that is helping the nation succeed in the global scheme of things. The last characteristic that all nationalism has, all strands of nationalism throughout time, believes this: they believe that the nation should rule. There should be no outside ruler ruling the people. It's the people within the nation. They are in charge. They are sovereign. this idea of sovereignty comes up within nationalism. As it says here, the nation has sovereignty over themselves, over their territory. No outside influence can tell them what to do. The nation has political control, going back to the idea on the whiteboard with all the different colored people and everything. The nation is the people in that circle. They elect their government, or there is some sort of governmental structure from which the people in the government are part of the nation themselves, and they have control over all of the political stuff, the power over social interaction within that group. They control the economy as well, how the money is spent. They control the movement of people. For example, immigration. How many people can come into our physical space? How many people can leave our physical space? And they also have power over the resources inside of the physical space they are in. No matter when a strand of nationalism or expression of nationalism happened, whether it was 1879 or 1957 or 2019, all of these characteristics have to be present for it to be considered a nationalist movement, or this idea of nationalism. Some other things can change, and we're going to take a look at nationalism's different expressions throughout time, but the core remains, and the core are these three ideas right here. So here's what you're going to do for today's module. First off, like I said, you're going to show me a picture of your handwritten notes of this presentation on nations and nationalism. Second, you're going to create a product that shows pictures of each of the characteristics of nationalism. Now you can do this a lot of different ways. You can do a PowerPoint that has like a picture montage of each of the characteristics. You can do a memes of all of the different characteristics of nationalism. Or you can do like an Instagram snapshot thing where you post Instagram posts about each of the characteristics of nationalism. The main thing is that you clearly show that you understand the three characteristics of nationalism, and you can do that however you want to through visuals. Give me pictures of what these things actually look like. You can use pictures on the internet, you can use your own pictures that you have taken, anything you want, but give me some sort of material, some sort of content that shows me you understand the three characteristics of nationalism as we have gone over them here. I hope you have a good rest of the day. I will see you soon. Maybe. I don't know. Ever again. Maybe. I don't know. Bye.